What Thomas didn't know was that every word he had just said into the microphone was being recorded
I
by
never
the FBI
imagined the journey
agent
would take me so
standing
far,
3 feet behind
but looking
him. I
back,
sat in my
I
chair at
wouldn't
the head
change a
table,
single
a
moment of the
slight
winding
smile on my
path.
face, and raised my glass of ginger ale. 40 years of partnership, and it was going to end like this. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Robert Mitchell, though most people just call me Bob. I'm 76 years old, and up until 6 months ago, I thought I knew everything about my business partner of 4 decades. Thomas Brennan and I had built Mitchell Brennan Industrial Supply from nothing, just 2 guys with a pickup truck and a dream back in 1985. We manufactured and distributed industrial parts for factories across the Mountain West. By the time I decided to retire, we had 3 facilities, 147 employees, and annual revenues of $22 million. I say had for a reason. The story really begins 2 years ago when my wife Catherine passed away. Ovarian cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it. She fought for 18 months, and I was there for every chemo session, every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night. Thomas was supportive during that time, or at least I thought he was. He'd stop by the hospital with coffee, tell me not to worry about the business, that he had everything under control. "You just focus on Kathy," he'd say, squeezing my shoulder. "The company will still be here when you get back." He was right about one thing. The company was still there. But by the time Catherine died and I returned to work full-time, something felt different. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. Little things. Thomas would end phone calls quickly when I walked into his office. Files that used to be on the shared drive were suddenly password protected. Our longtime accountant, Margaret, seemed nervous around me, avoiding eye contact during our monthly meetings. I told myself I was being paranoid. Grief does strange things to your mind. I was 64, exhausted, and maybe, as my daughter Jennifer gently suggested, I was looking for problems that weren't there because I needed something to focus on besides the empty house I went home to every night. But then came the board meeting in April of last year. We were sitting in our conference room, just the 4 of us, since it was a small company. Me, Thomas, Margaret, and James Chen, our operations manager. Thomas was presenting the annual financial report, clicking through slides with practiced ease. Revenue was up 7%. Profit margins were healthy. Everything looked great, except for one number that didn't make sense. "Wait," I said, holding up my hand. "Go back to the operating expenses slide." Thomas clicked back, irritation flickering across his face. "What about it?" "The professional services line item. It says we spent $1.2 million on consultants last year." "That seems high." "We had to bring in some specialists for the new inventory system," Thomas said smoothly. "You remember, Bob. We talked about it." I did remember discussing a new inventory system, but $1.2 million? For a company our size? I made a mental note to review the invoices later. I never got the chance. When I went looking for those records the next day, they weren't in the system. When I asked Margaret about it, she said they were archived off-site and would take a few days to retrieve. Those few days turned into 2 weeks, and when the documents finally arrived, they were printouts, not digital files. Harder to search, harder to analyze. That's when I started paying attention. Over the next 3 months, I noticed a pattern. Money would show up as consulting fees or professional services or contractor expenses, always in amounts just under $50,000, small enough not to trigger major scrutiny, but large enough to add up. I started keeping my own spreadsheet, tracking every questionable expense I could find. By July, I had identified nearly $2 million in spending that I couldn't account for. $2 million vanished into thin air, or more accurately, into Thomas's pocket. I didn't have proof yet, but I had 40 years of experience reading financial statements, and my gut told me something was very wrong. The question was what to do about it. If I confronted Thomas directly and I was wrong, I'd destroy our friendship and probably our business. If I was right and he knew I suspected something, he might cover his tracks even better, or find a way to make me look incompetent, maybe even senile. I knew how these things played out. I'd seen other older business owners pushed aside by younger partners who claimed they were losing it. I needed evidence. Real evidence. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I called my daughter. Jennifer is 38, a corporate attorney in Chicago, sharp as a tack. She'd wanted to join the family business after law school, but Catherine and I had encouraged her to build her own career instead. Don't let your life be defined by what we built, Catherine had told her. Go make your own mark. Jennifer had taken that advice to heart, and now she was a partner at a major firm, specializing in corporate fraud cases. When I told her what I'd found, she was quiet for a long moment. Dad, she finally said, if what you're saying is true, this is serious. We're talking about embezzlement, possibly wire fraud, maybe more. You need to be very careful how you handle this. I know. Do you trust your accountant, Margaret? I thought about that. Margaret had been with us for 15 years. She'd been acting strange, yes, but I'd always thought of her as honest. I think so. Maybe. She might just be scared. What about James? James Chen had been our operations manager for 12 years. Solid, reliable, never caused a problem. I trust James. He's a straight shooter. Okay, here's what you're going to do. Don't talk to anyone at the company about this yet. I'm going to refer you to someone, a forensic accountant I've worked with. His name is David Rosenberg, and he's based in Denver. He can do a quiet audit, see what's really going on. Can you get him access to the financial records? I'm still on the board. I still have access to everything. Good. Give him whatever he needs. And Dad, document everything. Keep a journal. Note dates, times, conversations. If this goes where I think it might go, you'll need it. So that's what I did. David Rosenberg turned out to be a soft-spoken man in his early 50s, with the kind of meticulous attention to detail that made him perfect for his job. He spent 6 weeks going through our financial records, working quietly from a small office we set up for him at one of our warehouses, away from the main building. I told Thomas and Margaret that David was doing a pre-retirement audit at my request, which wasn't entirely untrue. What David found was worse than I'd imagined. Thomas had been embezzling from the company for nearly 3 years, since right around the time Catherine got sick. He'd created fake vendor accounts, submitted fraudulent invoices, and even forged my signature on checks. The total amount stolen was just over $2.3 million. He'd been clever about it, spreading the theft across different accounts, keeping individual transactions small, always making sure the company stayed profitable enough that no one would look too closely. But he'd made mistakes. There were patterns in the fake invoices, similar wording, sequential invoice numbers from different vendors, payments always going to a small set of bank accounts. David traced those accounts back to a shell company Thomas had set up in Delaware. From there, the money went to pay off his gambling debts. Gambling. I had no idea Thomas gambled. 40 years. And I didn't know my partner had a problem that was serious enough to make him steal millions from the business we'd built together. David laid it all out in a comprehensive report, complete with bank records, forged signatures, and a detailed timeline. This is more than enough to prosecute, he said, sliding the document across the table to me. The question is whether you want to go to the police or handle it internally. I took the report home and read it cover to cover 3 times. Each page felt like a betrayal. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. This was 40 years of trust, broken. This was early mornings and late nights, sacrifices and celebrations, building something from nothing. Thomas had been at my wedding. I'd been at his kids' baptisms. We'd celebrated together, mourned together, built something together. And he'd been robbing me blind while my wife was dying. I called Jennifer. Go to the police, she said immediately. Dad, I know this is hard, but this isn't just about you. He stole from the employees too. Their pension fund, their future. And if you don't report it, he'll just do it again somewhere else. She was right, but I wanted something more. I wanted Thomas to admit what he'd done. I wanted him to face the consequences in front of everyone he'd betrayed, not just in a quiet settlement behind closed doors. That's when Jennifer suggested something that seemed crazy at first, but started to make sense the more I thought about it. Your retirement party, she said. It's in 3 months, right? Big event. Everyone from the company will be there. Probably some clients too. What if we let Thomas think he's won? Let him think you're leaving, and he's getting control of the whole company. Then, at the party, you show him exactly what you know. You want me to wait 3 months? I want you to build an airtight case. The party gives you a deadline and a stage. In the meantime, we go to the FBI. They can put together a wire fraud case, maybe RICO if the shell companies cross enough state lines. You wear a wire to some meetings with Thomas. Get him talking about what he plans to do after you retire. Maybe he'll slip up, say something incriminating. It was risky. 3 more months of pretending everything was fine, while my business partner continued to steal from me. But Jennifer was right, the more evidence we had, the better. And something about the poetic justice of exposing Thomas at my own retirement party appealed to me. So I called Special Agent Sarah Chen of the FBI's white-collar crime division. Agent Chen was in her early 40s, with sharp eyes and an efficient manner that reminded me of Jennifer. After reviewing David's report, she agreed that we had a strong case. "But your daughter's right," she said. "If we can get him on tape talking about the fraud, discussing what he plans to do with the company, maybe even planning to continue the embezzlement after you're gone, that makes the case even stronger." Over the next 2.5 months, I wore a wire to 4 different meetings with Thomas. It was surreal, having a recording device taped to my chest while I made small talk with my oldest friend. But Agent Chen coached me on what to ask, how to guide conversations without being obvious. The first meeting, we discussed the transition plan. Thomas was smooth, talking about how he'd take care of everything, how the company would be in good hands. I mentioned being worried about my retirement fund, which was tied up in company stock. "Don't worry, Bob," he said, that familiar hand on my shoulder. "I'll make sure you're taken care of. You've earned it." The second meeting, I brought up some of the suspicious expenses David had noticed. I was just going through old records, and I noticed some of these consultant fees seem high. I said casually. "Should I be worried about anything?" Thomas laughed it off. "You know how these things are. Sometimes you have to pay a premium to get good people. But don't worry once you're gone. I'll be able to tighten things up, cut some of those costs." Once I'm gone. The phrase stuck with me. The third meeting was the most revealing. Thomas had had a few drinks at a dinner, and his guard was down. He started talking about his plans for the company after I retired. "Honestly, Bob, there are some changes I've been wanting to make for years, but you're too conservative. Once I'm running things solo, I can really open up the throttle." "What kind of changes?" "Expansion, acquisitions. There's a competitor in Salt Lake that's struggling. I could probably pick them up for cheap. And I've been talking to some investors about bringing in capital to really scale up." Investors, more capital, more money for Thomas to skim. I smiled and nodded and let him talk. The fourth meeting, just 2 weeks before the retirement party, Thomas showed his true colors. We were in his office, going over the final transition documents. I'd be signing over my shares to him, giving him full control of the company. He had the papers ready. His lawyer had reviewed them. Everything was in order. "I have to say, Bob, I didn't think you'd actually go through with this," Thomas said, leaning back in his chair. "I thought you'd want to hang on forever, like most guys your age." "I'm 76, Thomas. It's time." "Yeah? Well, between you and me?" He lowered his voice, even though we were alone. "It's probably for the best. You've been slipping a little, you know, since Kathy died. Missing things, getting confused about numbers. I've been covering for you." The recording device on my chest captured every word. "I didn't realize," I said carefully. "It's okay. It happens. You're at that age where things start to go, you know?" He tapped his temple. "But don't worry. I'll take care of everything. The company will be fine. Better than fine. I trust you, Thomas. I know you do, buddy. That's what makes this work." That night, I listened to the recording with Agent Chen and Jennifer. When we got to that last part, "That's what makes this work," Jennifer's expression turned cold. "He thinks you're a senile old man," she said quietly. "He thinks he's gotten away with it." "He has gotten away with it," I said. "For 3 years." "Not anymore," Agent Chen said. "We have everything we need. At your retirement party, we'll let him give his speech, let him think he's won, then we move in." The retirement party was held at the Denver Botanical Gardens on a perfect September evening. Thomas had insisted on throwing it there, a big, lavish event. Nothing but the best for my partner, he'd said. Of course, I later learned he'd charged the $50,000 venue cost to the company as a business development event. 200 people showed up. Employees, clients, vendors, friends, family. Jennifer flew in from Chicago with her husband and 2 kids. My son Michael drove up from Albuquerque. There were speeches, toasts, a video montage of 40 years in business. People laughed at old photos of Thomas and me with our first delivery truck. They raised their glasses to the future. And Thomas was in his element. He worked the room like a politician, shaking hands, telling stories, playing the role of the loyal partner who was so sad to see me go but excited to carry on our legacy. He'd always been charming. That was one of the reasons we'd been successful. I was good with numbers and operations, and Thomas was good with people. At 8 o'clock, Thomas called everyone to attention. He stood at the microphone, a glass of champagne in his hand, and started his speech. 40 years ago, Bob Mitchell and I started a company with nothing but a dream and a used pickup truck. He began. We had no money, no connections, no experience. What we had was determination and friendship and a promise to each other that we'd build something great. The crowd applauded. I sat at the head table, smiling, my hand steady on my glass of ginger ale. Agent Chen stood near the bar, dressed as a guest, her badge hidden under her jacket. 3 other agents were scattered throughout the venue. Thomas continued, his voice getting emotional. Bob has been more than a business partner to me. He's been a brother, a friend, a mentor, and while I'm sad to see him step back, I'm honored, truly honored that he's trusting me to carry on what we built together. More applause. Jennifer, sitting next to me, squeezed my hand under the table. As of Monday morning, I'll be taking over full operational control of Mitchell Brennan Industrial Supply, Thomas said. And I want to make a promise to all of you, to our employees, our clients, our partners. I promise to run this company with the same integrity, the same dedication, the same values that Bob and I have always shared. Integrity, values. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. So please, join me in raising a glass to Bob Mitchell. Thank you for 40 years of partnership. Thank you for your trust. And thank you for building something we can all be proud of. Everyone stood, glasses raised. To Bob! I stood as well, nodding my thanks, waiting for the applause to die down. Then I walked to the microphone. Thomas started to step aside, but I gestured for him to stay. Thank you, Thomas. That was beautiful, I said. I'd like to say a few words too, if that's all right. Of course, buddy. It's your night. I looked out at the crowd. 200 faces looking back at me. People I'd worked with for decades. Friends. Family. People whose livelihoods depended on this company. 40 years? I began. That's a long time. Long enough to build something. Long enough to learn who people really are. Long enough to understand the difference between loyalty and betrayal. The room went quiet. Thomas shifted next to me, his smile faltering slightly. Most of you know that my wife, Catherine, passed away 2 years ago. It was the hardest period of my life. And during that time, I trusted my partner to take care of the business while I took care of her. I paused. That trust was misplaced. Thomas's face went pale. Bob, what are you? 6 months ago, I discovered that someone had been stealing from our company. Systematic embezzlement, fake vendors, forged signatures. Over the past 3 years, approximately $2.3 million has been stolen from Mitchell Brennan Industrial Supply. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Thomas took a step back from the microphone. For the past 6 months, I've been working with a forensic accountant and the FBI to build a case. We've traced the money. We've documented every fraudulent transaction. We've identified the offshore accounts where the money was hidden. I turned to look at Thomas,
that's when I understood.
And we've recorded
The
several
journey isn't
conversations
just
where
about
the thief
reaching the
discussed his
destination.
plans to continue
It's about
stealing
what you
after I
learn along
retired.
the way.
Bob, you're not thinking clearly, Thomas said, his voice loud enough to carry without the microphone. This is grief talking. You're confused. Am I? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small device. This is a recording from 2 weeks ago. Would you like to hear it? Agent Chen was already moving through the crowd, her badge now visible. I pressed play. Thomas's voice filled the room, tinny but clear through the portable speaker. You've been slipping a little, since Kathy died. Missing things, getting confused about numbers. I've been covering for you. It's probably for the best. You're at that age where things start to go. But don't worry, I'll take care of everything. That's what makes this work. The silence in the room was absolute. 200 people, frozen. Thomas Brennan, Agent Chen said, reaching him now. You're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Thomas looked at me, and for a moment, I saw real panic in his eyes. Not remorse, not guilt, just panic that he'd been caught. Bob, please, he said as Agent Chen handcuffed him. We can work this out. It was the gambling. I couldn't help it. I was going to pay it back. You stole from our employees? I said quietly. You stole from their pension fund. You stole from people who trusted us. And you did it while my wife was dying. They led him away. And the crowd parted to let them through. After the FBI vehicles pulled away, sirens silent but lights flashing, I stood at the microphone again. I apologize that your evening has been disrupted, I said. But I wanted all of you to be here for this. You deserve to know the truth. This company was built on trust and honesty, and it will continue that way. What happens to the company? Someone called out. I'm still retiring, I said, but not in the way we planned. The board will meet next week to discuss succession. My daughter Jennifer has agreed to serve as interim CEO while we conduct a proper search. In the meantime, James Chen will continue as COO, and Margaret I looked at our accountant, who was crying quietly. Margaret will work with the FBI to ensure we recover what was stolen and that our books are completely clean going forward. Margaret nodded, relief evident on her face. I'd learned later that Thomas had threatened her, told her he'd claim she was part of the embezzlement if she ever said anything. She'd been terrified, trapped, unable to speak up. The company will survive this, I said. We've survived worse, and we'll come back stronger, because we're going to do things the right way. The aftermath took months to sort out. Thomas pleaded guilty to avoid trial and was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. We recovered about $1.7 million of the stolen money. The rest was gone, lost to casinos and bookies. The FBI helped us implement new financial controls, and Jennifer stayed on as CEO for a year while we searched for the right person to take over. In the end, we hired James Chen to run the company. He'd earned it, and he understood our culture. Jennifer went back to Chicago, but she joined our board of directors, keeping a careful eye on things. As for me, I did retire. Really retired this time, but not before setting up something I'd been thinking about for a long time. Catherine had always wanted to do more for education. She'd been a teacher before we started the business, and she believed deeply that every kid should have a chance to learn a trade, to build something with their hands. So I took my share of the company sale. James and a group of investors bought me out for fair market value, and I established the Catherine Mitchell Scholarship Fund. Every year, the fund sends 20 students to trade schools: welding, electrical work, plumbing, carpentry. The jobs that built this country. The jobs that built my business. The kids who get these scholarships are ones who might not otherwise have the chance, kids from difficult backgrounds, kids who need a break, kids who just need someone to believe in them. At the first scholarship ceremony, I stood in front of 20 nervous teenagers and their families. My wife believed that everyone deserves a chance to build something, I said. Not everyone is meant to go to college, and that's okay. The world needs people who can build and fix and create with their hands. You're getting this scholarship not because you're perfect, but because you're willing to work, willing to learn, willing to build something. That's all Catherine ever wanted to help people build. One of the students, a girl named Maria, who wanted to be an electrician, came up to me afterward. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell," she said. "My dad said I should just get married and have kids. He said trade school was for boys. But I know I can do this." "You can," I told her. "And you will. I think about Thomas sometimes. I wonder if he understands what he threw away. Not just the money or his freedom, but the legacy. We could have built something that lasted. We could have created jobs, helped people, made a difference. Instead, he chose the quick score, the easy money, the lie. But I also think about Catherine and what she'd say if she could see what we've done with the scholarship fund. She'd probably say I'm spending too much time at the office, organizing the program instead of enjoying my retirement. She'd be right. But this doesn't feel like work. It feels like building again, like creating something that matters. Last month, one of our scholarship recipients got her journeyman electrician's license. She sent me a photo of herself in her work gear, grinning, standing in front of a commercial building she'd helped wire. The note said, "I built this. Thank you for believing I could." I put that photo on my refrigerator, right next to a picture of Catherine from our wedding day. Sometimes betrayal shows you who people really are, but sometimes it also shows you who you want to be. Thomas chose theft and lies. I choose to build, even now, even after everything. Because that's what Catherine taught me, and that's what 40 years in business taught me. You can tear things down, or you can build them up. In the end, only one of those options matters, and I'm still building.
I never thought I'd look back and see that one decision changed everything. But it did, and here we are,